Hi, this is Swapnil Bhartiya and welcome to another episode of TFiR Let's Talk. And today we have with us Kumar Ramachandran, Senior Vice President of SASE products at Palo Alto Networks. Kumar, it's great to have you on the show.
Swapnil, it's a treat to be here with you and your audience.
Yeah, and today we are going to talk about Zero Trust Network Access 2.0. Before we talk about specifically 2.0, I would like to understand from you because these days we talk a lot about security. I came back from KubeCon and security was a big talk, and not just security, software supply chain security as well. So before we talk about all of those things, I would love to know from you, how would you define Zero Trust Network?
It all starts back with the transformation that's happening, right? I think in the last 2 years, we've seen one of the biggest business and social transformations because of the pandemic, right? Today, just think about it. 2 years ago, we wouldn't have thought that the extent of hybrid work, flexible work models would be here to stay. Most enterprises today pretty much have gotten to a place where employees can work from anywhere as long as it's feasible. The second big transformation we've also seen is the acceleration in digital, multi-cloud, etc. Right? So we've moved from this place where you're connecting branches to data centers to all of a sudden we just need to connect users to applications. If you remember, Swapnil, even a few months ago, we used to say, I'm going to go to work because work was a location, right? Whereas now we just open our laptops and start work. Work is an activity, it's not a location. So when you look at this change, what happens is that as you connect users and applications and the users multiply, right? You have a large number of users from anywhere, home, mobile, from the branch location, and the applications can also be anywhere. So that matrix creates a very large surface area for the bad guys to attack. So as you design for this new world, you have to ensure that you're protecting that large surface area. That's the reason why you need zero trust. Now, when we think about zero trust, there's a bunch of principles that we can get into, but overarchingly, enterprises that are looking to architect for hybrid work, architect for multi-cloud and digital, they are the ones that absolutely find that zero trust is a mandate.
Excellent. Once again, thanks for not only explaining that, but also bring it in modern context. That how I loved it when you said that instead of work is no longer a place, it's just another activity. It's like it's a state of more. To be honest with you, since I have always been working from home from the early days, work from home is more like a state of mind, right? You're switching between personal life versus work, and people can be very, very efficient because there's much more better balance. You do need discipline. I'll go back to the point of zero trust because we have been talking about zero trust for a very long time. Because of this pandemic, it's just like in that Avenger Endgame movie, there was a blip of 5 years, everybody disappeared. So this COVID kind of had been a blip in the IT world as well. So when we were hearing about zero trust a couple of years ago versus when we talk about it now, so that's why I was asking you that how would you define zero trust? Because when we do look at zero trust network, some people say, hey, you don't trust anything, but the fact is you do trust things, you trust processes. So I just want to quickly talk about how would you define it?
So when we think about zero trust and ZTNA 2.0, I think there are three principles that we think are absolutely crucial. The very first is that you want the principle of least privilege access. Let me try and explain what that is. So with legacy VPNs, what used to happen is that as long as you're in my network, I would give you access to all the resources in the network, right? What we're doing with ZTNA 2.0 is really ensuring that only the resources that are absolutely required to complete the activity, you get access to those resources. So let me give you an example, right? Now that we've all started flying, if you think about when you go to an airport, right? Which is a resource you get access to? Your driver's license says, this is my user ID, right? And then your boarding pass explains which resource you have access to. And the boarding pass says you have access to one plane that takes off on a certain date, certain time. And in fact, even within that plane, a certain section. And within that section, one seat. That's the resource you have access to. I cannot have an economy seat and then sit in the cockpit of the plane. right? So what we found is that the older ZTNA 1.0 implementations, they kind of gave access to you anything in the airport, right? As long as you got to the airport, you could board any plane. Clearly, that's not good. The second big principle is this principle of continuous trust verification. Now, it's not enough that someone's checking your boarding pass, someone's checking your driver's license as you're entering the airport. Once you're on the plane, if you're misbehaving, throwing your drink on the steward, or you're banging on the cockpit door, or trying to open an exit door, you're going to be stopped. Your access is going to be taken away. Similarly, just because I gave you access to the application doesn't mean I stop monitoring it. Real time, there has to be continuous verification of trust and revocation of trust the moment that trust is violated. And then the third is that you need deep security and data protection. What we mean by that, again, and I'll use the airport analogy one last time, is that, yeah, someone's checking your boarding pass and driver's license, but in addition to that, your luggage is going through an X-ray machine, right? Someone's applying those infrared or whatever deep inspection into to see that you're not carrying anything untoward. Similarly, there has to be deep security inspection. There has to be data exfiltration inspection on all the traffic. So when we think ZTNA 2.0, these are the principles that we are bringing to fore in the marketplace.
Excellent, and I love the way you share analogies. They're so good. It makes it easier for folks to actually understand, because sometimes security can be challenging and complicated. Now, while you do explain these three, kind of concept or ideas behind ZTNA 2.0, I would also love to hear a bit about. Let's just look at version 1 when it was developed. What kind of specific problem? Because in the early days, but more or less like you have corporate firewalls or VPNs and stuff like that. So talk about at time when it was compared, what was limitation that we now need 2.0?
Yeah. So if you think about it, right, very early on, let's say in the 90s, that's when you had legacy VPNs being deployed. I think legacy VPNs were anchored around connecting branches to data centers, right? And then it started going towards some amount of home usage. When Palo Alto Networks was founded by Nirzo, Lee Klarich, and others, pretty much Palo Alto came out with this modern concept of saying, yeah, you can connect those locations or users, but you have to apply user ID, app ID, and device ID against the constructs. Palo Alto invented the ability. See, if you think about it, all traffic at that time was web traffic. A lot of traffic was becoming web traffic. But just not enough to say, oh, it's web traffic. You have to understand which application is it. Is it Salesforce.com? Is it Workday? Is it a different application? Just because it's web. Web is not an application. There's an underlying application. So Palo Alto brought in the notion that you have to understand that. And then now, what happened with ZTNA 1.0 is that, so ZTNA 1.0 got invented in the early 2010s. Right? Sometimes people think ZTNA is very new. It's not, right? It's I keep reminding people. I make this dad joke that when ZTNA 1.0 came about, people were dancing to Gangnam Style, right? It's that old. And what happened is that the pandemic happened. ZTNA 1.0 inventors or implementers, they didn't architect for the pandemic world. The companies that are trying to architect their infrastructure and their security today, they're worried about saying, oh, I'm not architecting for a pre-pandemic world, I'm architecting for a post-pandemic world. The difference in the pre-pandemic and post-pandemic world is that now I truly have to ensure hybrid work. I have to ensure that my user can be anywhere. I still need to provide a consistent security and user experience. Similarly, the pandemic also saw a dramatic acceleration in cloud adoption because of digital. In fact, there was this really interesting poll on LinkedIn that I saw some months ago. It said, who accelerated digital in your organization? CEO, CIO, COVID-19, right? Enterprises just realized to keep pace with the changing dynamic, you had to digitize every part of your business. Now, what does digitization mean? It means that for most people, it has meant that we have to implement cloud native applications, SaaS applications across the board. So this new model is where ZTNA 1.0 fails, right? If it was a simple pre-pandemic world, then 1.0 could have been helpful for some customers. So right now what we're seeing is that customers are moving from VPN directly to ZTNA 2.0. There's just no need to stop at the 1.0 pit stop.
Since you're talking about hybrid workflow, one more thing that is changing is that in the early days, in the world of VPN, you used to get a laptop from the office. Now folks are using the private and personal life is also done on the same laptop, same computer. Our networks are also connected all the way from TV to smart fridges, so everything is on the same network. How has that changed? Because the fact is that if your TV is compromised, everything else is compromised, and you're using the same. It could be iPad, it could be mobile phone, it could be your laptop. It's not a separate work laptop. So how has that also, I mean, when you talk about hybrid workforce, the challenges are also different because the way we are accessing our, enterprise applications is also different.
So you're hitting on a very important point, right? The reality is that the scale and spread of the attacks, they've just gone up dramatically. In fact, today at Palo Alto Networks, we see and stop about 224 billion threats every single day, right? That's just a enormous scale of magnitude. Now, when you think about the scale at which the threat actors are operating, what becomes very clear is that traditional methods of applying security are not sufficient. You need to have a new way, right? You can't fight, you can't be in a gun battle with a pocket knife, right? You actually need a different set of tools. So about 5 years ago, Palo Alto started investing very aggressively in data science, right? And in operating data science at scale. So today we're seeing the results of it for our customers. So 95% of all new threats, these are threats that have never been seen before by our system. Today we stop using inline AI and ML, right? So in all these cases, there is no need for zero victim. There is no first victim or victims. You don't need to generate signatures, propagate signatures, etc. And the remaining 5%, we still apply 4.3 million security updates every single day, right? So you just see the scale at which the entire system is operating. When it comes to the home, right? I know you referenced the home. The reality is for most of us, for all of us, right? In the end, our families are our most important asset, our home and our families. They're as important, if not even more important for all of us to protect. So at Palo Alto, we've released a product that addresses full home security. It's a product called OKIO, and you can actually deploy OKIO at home. And what OKIO does is you can create two segments, one for your personal segment, where your kids, your family, and your refrigerator and all the other devices are there, and then a work segment that integrates with the rest of our ZTNA system. The reason to separate these two is because the personal segment, all of us want it to be completely private. We don't want our employer or anybody else to see it, right? My kids browsing my, anybody else at home, it's none of anybody else's business, right? It's whatever is happening, and employers don't want to get involved in it too, right? It's privacy, it's only for the person. So we guarantee and ensure that the way our OKIO device operates when set up right is that the private segment is completely private, and then the work segment fluidly integrates with our rest of our ZTNA capabilities. So we're seeing customers that have call center employees with multiple devices, printers, IP phones, etc. It's very useful. We're also seeing companies that have specific employees. They're taking 10, 20, or whatever the right percentage of employees that they think are handling sensitive data, or their execs, highly visible execs. They want to apply extra protections because otherwise they might be targeted attacks on their home. They're applying those protections across the board.
Yeah, maybe when it comes to, it's just not about personal activities. Sometimes personal activities can be sensitive as well. I may be accessing my health information. I may be talking to my doctor, so I don't want, there's so many different things. One more thing that I want to talk to you about is also that while we talk a lot about security, enterprises do understand there's a difference between there's an awareness about it versus how much is being practiced. So what have you seen? How many organizations you see are kind of, because when we see all the reports, sometimes things are still scary where you do see attacks are, of course, attacks are not going to go away. Security is not a product, it's a process. And there will always be bad actors, could be for whatever incentive they have. So talk about what you have seen, awareness versus practice.
Definitely security has become a board level conversation now, right? It's one of those things where, yes, nobody is deploying security for security's sake. People are deploying security, get their business done in a secure manner, and ensure that you have security and infrastructure operating at scale. At the same time, I do think that the awareness and the understanding and the sensitivities around it are very, very high in most well-run organizations. Now, you're spot on in pointing that the human part of it can be the weak link. If your people are not trained, they're not gone through compliance training, and then they're not exhibiting the right kinds of behaviors, right? So most companies, because the layer 8, right? It's not enough for the networking layer 1 through layer 7 stack. The layer 8, the human component, is absolutely critical. And so we are seeing, most customers are very conscious. You could always be more conscious. You could always be, paying more attention. But there's definitely significantly heightened awareness across the board. Now, the other thing I'll throw in there is the power of data science, right? What we're also doing with the power of data science is to be able to understand both in a reactive manner, what is expected behavior, what is the deviation from expected behavior, and then being able to proactively take actions. And then there is also the point on response times. If there is an incident, how quickly can you respond? How do you ensure that there are not lags against it? Those are all areas where Palo Alto is just an absolute leader, right? We've invested very aggressively in helping our customers stay secure against all these things. I'll throw one last bit on that topic. One place where people wind up being, making compromises really is if security and usability get in conflict, right? You're trying to get this, you and I right now, we're trying to get this conversation going and done. If for some reason security got in the way, there is a temptation to say, oh, let me just shut down my security and quickly complete this transaction. And that's the challenge, right? So what we've done with our ZTNA 2.0 Prisma Access products really is ensure that we can deliver great user experiences while delivering great security. So you never want usability and security to be in conflict.
It's nothing new, but edge computing. And when we talk about edge computing, I'm not talking about tiny IoT devices. It could be edge data centers where with the advent of 5G, especially 5G private networks, edge is moving like kind of closer towards where the users are. So how do you look at edge when it comes to zero trust network access as well? Because that's where applications running closer to the users, not going all the way to the cloud.
Yeah, so actually, 5G is an exciting development, right? So Palo Alto, we've invested very aggressively in 5G security and ensuring that 5G networks, as built out by the carriers, have security natively built in. So if you think about the internet, right, the internet was built open in an insecure manner, and then we had to ensure that as enterprise and customers use it, it had to be secure. So we are helping all the carriers ensure that security is natively built in to the 5G networks. What we've also done is that we're seeing interesting use cases of 5G in branch office locations. So as an example, we see customers where someone has internet broadband and then they're deploying 5G. The carriers are getting pretty aggressive in terms of creating attractive pricing options when it comes to 5G. And as these 5G rollouts are gaining steam, customers are seeing that, hey, I could skip terrestrial in certain areas where I was challenged, or I could just use internet broadband and 5G and use all of it in a secure manner. So with our branch products, right, we now have native 5G cards and 5G capabilities natively built into our products, right? So you bring security and network together rather than letting these be divorced. And then the last thing, I think part of the journey for this for edge computing is about performance, right? In the end, you're trying to solve for ensuring great user experiences and lowered latencies. Now, a lot of that starts with visibility, right? You want visibility into what is that end user experience, and so then you can take actions to ensure that you're delivering these end user experiences really well. Now, at Palo Alto, what we've done is we've invested very aggressively in this space. So today, when you're sitting at home, right? Most of us, we're at home, we're on Zoom calls, work calls, etc. And oftentimes, if there's a performance problem, we don't know what's really gone wrong, right? All we can do is open a trouble ticket with IT and hope that IT will get to us. So what we can now do with the Palo Alto ZTNA products is that if there's a problem on your Zoom call or whatever platform you're using, or an application like Office 365 or Google Docs or anything else, we can actually expose to the end user, hey, there's this problem because maybe you have too many browser tabs open and your laptop is running really slow, or maybe you're sitting in your backyard where your Wi-Fi coverage is not strong enough, or maybe your kid is and family are downloading so much Netflix content that there is not enough bandwidth left for a video upload like this. In all those cases, your corporate IT cannot help you. You really need to self-serve, but you need visibility so you can self-serve. So we're providing all those tools to the end user natively as part of our ZTNA 2.0 product, and which is why I keep saying that security and user experiences both have to come together to truly stay secure and truly get business done in an agile manner.
Kumar, thank you so much for taking time out today and talk about, of course, zero trust network access, and also share your insight and anecdotes. So thanks for sharing them as well. And I would love to have you back on the show. Thank you.
Swapnil, thanks much for having me.